How's it going, everyone? It's Zimzilla back again, once again, to deal with what we thought, we hoped, we prayed it was an April Fool's Day joke, but that doesn't seem to be the case now, is it? Unfortunately, this video from Raiden is what we all thought it was going to be. A pretty bog standard movie bro, critique bro, I guess in this case. I think that's also still disrespectful because I like his content. I generally like a lot of the stuff that he does, and unfortunately, every time someone decides that they're gonna talk about Godzilla, they almost always do the bare minimum. But unlike you guys, who I appreciate you guys coming on, you guys care about this stuff, you care about Godzilla, and for that's why we're making a impact here on the YouTubes and trying to encourage healthier discussion. So let's just say hi to some of the healthier discussion folks here, Leader of the Lost Souls, who I still have not unfortunately responded to all your comments. I'll probably be doing that after this stream since I woke up a little bit later than I expected to, even though of course last night's stream was like 3-4 hours and ended at midnight, so it is what it is. And Antonia, you are correct, we are going to be experiencing cringe, as you say here. And yeah, I did not particularly like this video either. Heyo from the Minecraft world, and the 98 lover himself, Vic. No lie. No, there's not really lies, at least in the video, but definitely not the best things. Lava Dracovania. Oh no, I was hoping it was an April Fool's joke. Well, there goes my lunch memory. I guess you mean lunch money. And then Barp or Brap from Godzilla Not. How's it going? And then the ever infamous Proto Skipper, Blackaroony, when they cooking your goat and you Logie gotta take it because he's on fraud watch. No, literally. I wish he had done a better job on this, because I like his content for the most part, so he is kind of a goat, and unfortunately the goat did not deliver. In the words of the movie literally titled The Goat, bro's gonna have to be providing us with some goat tears, to say the least. Maybe it's still a joke, a dragged out April Fool's joke. I have to wait for the next video to be sure, not gonna lie. I don't remember. Was it the case that he does say to be continued in this? I might have to check again. I don't remember there being a to be continued, because he gets all the way towards the end. And it's interesting to note that he finally, like, man starts talking about Godzilla right around the same time we're getting the teaser for -0. Funny how that works. And then the one Xenomorph, why have I been summoned? You've been summoned to listen to cringe, my friend. Did you know Logan Paul owns a Triceratops skull? You're a YouTuber. What you got? Women who jump scare my channel members and make them scatter because it's a woman. And Kaiju Crew, I am here listening on the clock. Well, I appreciate it. Anyone who is here listening in and adding to the view count, I appreciate it, because it is the support from viewers like you that helps this channel grow. Thank you. And therefore, PBS is not going to sue me for that. And Super Mecha Godzilla or SMG, yo, how's it going? I appreciate all the people, faces new and old, for coming on. I do like his Ironheart videos, but he just isn't good at Godzilla, it seems. Well, unlike his Ironheart videos, he doesn't really dedicate a whole lot of time to Godzilla. And in the case of Godzilla, there's way more history and like time that would need to be stated. Like, there needs to be more time dedicated to something as large as like going over all of Godzilla's history versus Ironheart, which by comparison is far smaller. But it just seems to be the case. Anytime someone brings up Godzilla, they're always going to go over the entire history, and it's like maybe a 20-30 minute video. It's a Boko movie fan act like he knows what he's talking about. Exactly. But yeah, Minecraft said it right here. We'll talk about it now. So someone had sent me a screenshot of what was going on with this individual, and I wasn't exactly sure like what was happening at first, because I checked this person's Twitter, I didn't see it, and I checked the YouTube, and that's where it was. So about 3 hours ago now, unknowingly, also known as the guy who was the man in the suits. He did that series. He essentially put out a I don't think I can even say the word nowadays. Since I don't really talk about it. I know how YouTube feels about it, but like I guess we'll just use we'll have to use a funny term just to get around it. A slurry side note essentially on his YouTube post. And it's been 3 hours. There really hasn't been any discussion in terms of like he hasn't. There's been no post. There hasn't been any comments in regards to this. I'm just gonna refresh now. I don't want to put it on screen. Everyone knows who unknowingly is, but I haven't. There's obviously people who have liked other posts, so that doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, so for anyone who is religious, I just ask that you pray for his safety. And if you are not religious, I guess in this case, just hope that part of what he mentions is that he is hopefully alive somewhere, being treated, and that hopefully he was unsuccessful in what it is that he's doing. I'll say this: I have never particularly been a fan of the Man in the Suit. It's not a series that was for me. I don't really think like it was all of that interesting. That being said, I don't think I ever had like an innate desire to tear down the series for a lot of the perceived things that people claim that it was in regards to Godzilla, such as the whole like it being disrespectful to the creatives behind Godzilla. Of course, I know, given the nature of the franchise from its inception and the people who worked on it, that it can come across as disrespectful in the sense that these are people who are who just dealt with like nuclear holocaust and are trying to make a film in order to cope with that, and then someone years down the line essentially takes that history and makes like a Five Nights at Freddy's styled series. And in this case, because like so many people have such a deep connection to this franchise and to those people, it can come across as being done in poor taste. I think that is no difference to a lot of other analog horror that may take famous people and either make them more villainous or monstrous for the sake of the content. And I don't think unknowingly meant anything by it. He's obviously a younger guy. I don't know how old specifically he is. I thought he might have like either turned or like was like 18, like either around this year or earlier, couple years ago. I've never really interacted with him, and I've just kind of seen him popped in and out. But yeah, in this case, if he is a kid, he's someone who obviously just grew up with the Five Nights at Freddy's craze, the analog horror stint that was on YouTube, and as a Godzilla fan, wanted to do something that was Godzilla flavored. I think he was. I know he was definitely underage when he made the series, and you're saying he turned 18 recently. Yeah, so obviously puberty, hormones, and just generally being at such a young age, having exceptionally high success, but also receiving an immense amount of backlash, goes without saying. I it sucks. It sucks to say the least. I just hope he's okay, because he did not deserve like the massive amounts of hate that he got. And yeah, I just that's all I really gotta say. Pray for him if you're religious, and if not, let's just hope. And if anyone does know anything, yeah, just let me know. I would love to know what's going on. Actually, I think in this case, I know some of y'all might follow him, and I think in this case, if he's able to or has time to do a stream on it, someone could contact Goji guy. I know he's on Instagram. I would contact him right now, which I might do in like a couple seconds. Just be like if he knows anything, or if something's going on, I would love to like contribute financially or otherwise to like any kind of charity that we want to set up in regards to like what he's going through. So on that note, yeah, let's move on to something that's gonna be more fun for us, which is bashing bad takes. But again, if anyone has any updates, put it in the chat, regardless of where you're viewing from. or if you have me on like Discord or Instagram, just send me a DM. And yeah, let's just pray for safety, guys. But in other news, I have been looking at what's going on with the -0 poll that I did. So as of right now, before we figure out what the teaser is tomorrow, we got 4 monsters put in the poll: Anguirus, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Hedorah. So at the moment, in first place so far is Anguirus with 57% of the vote. The Anguirus votes. It's going all the way to the top. Anguirus stocks are up. I love my big spiky boy. No one loves more spikes than me. I was about to say no one likes more boys than me. That was all. That would have been bad. And then following up, the runner-up, the turd herself, Twisted Hedorah at 33%. And then following up in third place, the three-headed terror, the three-headed dookie, the buffoon, the alien, the illegal alien, King Ghidorah, as I like to say. He's 7% of the vote. And then Crooked Mothra in fourth place with only 4% of the vote. Seems appropriate. But yeah, I think right now, in terms of where I've got my stocks on, Hedorah technically is black, so anytime I go to like the casino, I put everything on black. But in this case, I got to go for the gold. My money's still on Ghidorah, primarily because of the fact of the poster having all the gold trimming. Yamazaki has 2 films that are in his like top 4 favorite Godzilla films that have Ghidorah in it. He has a direct attachment to Ghidorah because I think it like was filming or it takes place in an area that he grew up in, and he's already designed a Ghidorah before. So as a result, I'm going with Ghidorah, and if it ends up being the case that it is Ghidorah, I'm going to have to like rush a video into production to explain the rationale as to why Ghidorah isn't overused and why it's a good thing Ghidorah would be in this film. If that ends up being the case, I know everyone does not want to see Ghidorah again, but I have my reasons. And then obviously the 98 lover says my bet is that Godzilla's new regenerative form is Godzilla 98. That would be awful. I'm sorry. That's sad. That's really sad. No, that'd be the worst Godzilla film ever. Tiny underscore 99. Hello, welcome. Love the Ultra Galaxy Gomer picture right there. I'd be down for another solo movie just to see if he can do it. Yeah, that'd be like the first time we could get a solo Godzilla film back to back. I'd be down for it, but yeah, I'm interested to see what happens. Once it says, and the crowd goes mild. I guess that's some reference to Gore. I just want Anguirus so we can get a Raids Again remake. Yeah, I'd love seeing Anguirus for Raids Again remake. So I'd be down for all of that. I'm just kind of down to see whatever happens. I've already explained my general sentiment in regards to what I want this film to be and do in terms of what's going on here. But let's get everything on the way and start talking about ye old stream submissions, because I said I'd hold off. So I guess we'll also be appropriate here too. I gotta have some good old Godzilla Raids Again lo-fi to go with this. Obviously, this is give him a whirl around. But starting off, we've got a Nemesis fighting game screen. This one was designed by Minecraft World. So you see all the characters from the Nemesis series, which I actually have to say, Minecraft, what's interesting is that with your art, you generally have really big lines. And here, I feel like your bigger lines work because it makes all of like the character silhouettes stand out. So I don't know what, like how it made, like making them smaller, like I think helped them in a lot. And I think that's just interesting and I really like it. In terms of who I'm maining, could be basic and just say Nemesis because she's gonna be like the Shoto of the game, but probably him and maybe Lovecraft, probably him actually, because I'm a Lovecraft guy around here, I guess. But also you did a Neos versus King Caesar piece right here, which you gotta go with classic Caesar. Nothing beats classic King Caesar, but I love what you did here. And obviously you and Vic are way more big on doing the dynamic poses. I need to get better at that. So you guys are always big inspirations to me. And now this one, I love this one. I just want to remember who specifically uploaded this. It was Xeon. Yes. Or no, like Xeno. It was, look at this amazing piece of art. This is hyper original. I would never steal this. I mean, like don't sue me, man. I think like maybe G-Rex has similar designs. So like in terms of color, just the color. Don't sue me over it. I'm sorry. Yeah, do not steal. Donut steal. But yeah. It's funny, I've never really done like a video entirely about like Godzilla like fan gojis and stuff like that, which it requires a video in and of itself. But if you guys want to see more similar types of videos like this, helping out with the Patreon, that's like a big thing, because more finances that flow through means I have more time to work on this stuff, which I'll leave the little QR code right there, as well as the links in the description too. But we next have Mortilicus. This is Intestine Inspector's kaiju, but this is done by the stud himself, Nico. Now, obviously Nico's really good at adding shadows, adding that detail there, and it's softer because it's Nico's style, so it loses a little bit of, as I like to call him, Morty's edge. But I love what he did with the wings. The head's perfect. The shading right here along the bone tail is awesome. So Inspector definitely takes some notes on this, man. This is really good. I love it. And he also did the upgraded or new version of Phallus. So we talked about it before, about the changes that were good in terms of getting Phallus beyond just big purple and white whale. And I think that this captures it perfectly, as does the updated version by Minecraft as well. Now he also did two other pieces, which was Magora, but he did two versions. He did this one and this one. Now, I believe this one is the upgraded version. This was the original. I personally think that I like the body of this version here, but I like the legs, or at least the back legs here, because he's very plump here, and I think giving the legs gives him a more rounded vibe. So as a result, I think combining the two would make it perfect. But I love it, man. As always, you do good stuff. And now from Antonio, or Hoshi, however you like to say it, he did a Kong and Suko piece. And hey, look at the guy. He's just a little guy. He's a little monkey with anime Kong face, which I love. Again, Hoshi's art's really inspired by a lot of the more grunge-looking mangaka and their styles. Definitely is a very Kengan-esque vibe to it. As well as Suko here looks very much like a plushie, which actually makes me kind of like him more. How dare you, Hoshi, making me actually kind of like Suko. But then he also did this piece right here for his kaiju Appo, the Gardener of Dreams, with his comparison next to a blue whale. Now, it's been some time since he did an Appo piece, and I feel like, if I remember correctly, wasn't there like more red on the design the first time you did it, like more reds and more pinks? Where in this case, it's mostly oranges, blacks, and grays. I still like it. It's just, I'm interested tell me if I'm being wrong when I say that, because it could be the case that I'm misremembering and I'm thinking of a different piece that you uploaded, because I kind of do miss some of the reds, because that is kind of like your style and you are very dedicated to certain colors in your color palette. So hey, I rock with it, my man. And now next up, we have two pieces that are be coming from Vic. This one is Orcotherix. This is his little ice lizard boy. Now, I gotta be somewhat critical here with this guy. I think, I like it generally. Body plan's nice. I do, however, think that this piece could be a little bigger, or replace this primarily, replace that, bring a sail here, or take the colors that you see here, add it to the fins here and to the webbing. Because I think like this detail feels a tad superfluous when you have both just the fins here. It feels kind of lopsided to me. That's just me. But I still like it overall generally. I think other thing would probably be tapering this portion here. I'm gonna have to zoom in to explain what I mean. So I think from here, if you want to keep the dip at this point, you may want to move up and then down, so it feels a little bit more natural. Only reason why I say that is it feels really cut across, and with how you have a lot more softer like curves and the like for your art style, I think just that right there feels a little too sharp. It's something I'd probably do, and I think in this case, like, it clashes so close to this line right here where I think you could probably fix it if you added that there. But overall, it's still like an amazing piece. But then he also did another one, which is Voltron. But this one very much taking a similar cues from him as well with the armor, which I've also done similar styles of my armor as well. I know G-Rex being the big one that I've done. But this kind of feels like another version of a Psycho Vulture. I'm not sure if that was the intention behind it, but character-wise, it just reads better than a Psycho Vulture. So congratulations, you did another thing better than the Monsterverse, which in a lot of ways isn't a hard thing to do. But I like it overall. I think if I was to add anything, I guess, I'd probably say make this more identifiably a beak, and maybe take the bump here, make it more noticeable, and then maybe add just a little bit there to the back, and maybe some of the arms, just so it just draws your eyes to those other locations. But overall, again, really good piece. But then closing out, of course, okay, cool. We have Vic trying to bring Poach to life as a Keshi figure. Now, I didn't know what these were, or at least I didn't know what the name was until someone explained it to me, which was Vic. And what he wants to do is essentially get a Poacher resin figure. Right now, the goal is to raise $500 for the sculpt, the prototype, and then production material. And you'll be able to share this. I can share this to Facebook. I'm probably going to do so later on today. But if you guys are feeling super generous, then putting down some money here would be perfect. And I think that supporting other projects like this, whether it's mine or someone else's, continues to elevate the kaiju community as a whole, and it just shows like how awesome and supportive that we can be to each other. So definitely support how you can. Doesn't need to be a lot, but just any little bit helps. So I'm also going to be putting the link right here in the description for anyone who is curious. I'll probably, actually, what I'll do instead is I'm going to delete these versions here and get a better version there for the link. That should be better. Calvin impression. Kiss your protons goodnight, booger being. And yeah, no, of course. And I know Lau has a late submission, but I just wanted to reduce everything down because I need to give this thing the entire floor because it is the best piece of artwork I have ever seen, guys. And this goes without saying. So look at this. This is Donut Steel, a new cast member to the Zimcast, the ever-growing companions of Zogra and his band of merry men. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Donut Steel. So as you can tell, clearly, he's a donut made of steel. And his power is to do not steal. Because he cares about the kids. He wants to encourage people not to commit arson, not to commit theft. He wants to create a better world than the world that he's left behind and the world he was born into. Because as you see, he was once a lonely, half-eaten donut that was taken up in the swell in the Hudson River, taken out to sea, where the French nuclear tests mutated him into the creature that he is now. And as a result, he now scours the earth, making sure people do not steal. And that is the origins of Donut Steel, guys. If you want to add anything to Donut Steel's lore, join the Discord. That's going to be the best way to do it. If we get enough people doing that, I will just make a dedicated Donut Steel channel for it. So let's get the Discord added right there. There's always the one in the description. And Yeah, let's finally talk about Braden's video. So we'll end off on the music here. And I know someone said they really like the music, so yeah, definitely give Black Rooney a shout out because he always needs the work. He's a good man. He's a good man. Now, as per the request of several people, I have been able to get something set up so we don't have to worry about the Zimcast being sponsored by yada yada yada. In anyways, what I want to do is I want to make sure that you guys can actually hear what is being said. So we're going to play it for a little bit. I'll stop. And then for anyone who is listening in chat, type 1. We're just going to go for about like 10 seconds and then we'll continue on.
This video is a follow-up on a breakdown of Godzilla's film history for the sake of determining how we ended up having two very different styles of Godzilla movies getting made at the same time across two.
Okay, so you guys can hear it. Perfect. That's what I love to hear. And I guess in terms of actually having to go back and listen to like what I originally said, there really wasn't anything that I felt was good. So yeah, everyone can hear everything just fine. So 1, yeah, 1 if you can. I did say that, yeah. 1 if you can hear, correct? Yeah, you're correct, leader. The idea, like the videos, edited wise, they aren't bad. It's just, yeah, the knowledge is very much lacking, as some might say. This is muted. Is it muted, guys? Or were you able to hear that? Obviously, I know I'm going to be working with the delay. So I'm just going to have to play by ear, as it's said. Okay, so you can hear loud and clear. Awesome.
Two different countries. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already, and let's keep this going. The Heisei era spawned 7 films in roughly 10 years, with the era ending as a result of TriStar Pictures acquiring the rights to create the very first American Godzilla movie. So in order to avoid confusing the brand and storyline, Toho decided to put their own Godzilla films to rest, making it seem like they were going to indefinitely pass the torch to the American studio.
Well, it wasn't a matter of indefinitely passing it on, because a lot of people assume that the agreement happened closer to the release of the film than it actually was, but the agreement was signed in 92, and 93 is Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. That's when you kind of had that ending where it could make sense for the film to end there. And then they were like, oh, nope, American film hasn't been made. So then they're like, okay, we'll do another one. That's when you get Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. That is a pretty definitive ending as well. Then once again, the American movie has not come out yet. Finally, they're like, well, we can't keep dragging this out, so we'll finally just end things, and then we'll just wait for the American film to come out, which is why you get Destroyer in 95, and then another 3 years until you get 98.
Circumstances turned out better, it may have actually played out that way, but unfortunately, the American movie did not go so well.
I also want to say, because this gives me a reason to diss 98. Yes, anytime I hear someone says something to the effect of, well, this film takes Godzilla seriously, there's these small little moments here where it's very clear that they did not take Godzilla seriously, among other scenes that I'll be able to put in the complete retrospective.
Wrong floor. When the movie released, it was met with vicious, universal hatred. Why? Because it was deemed to be Godzilla in name only. It was revealed after the fact that the movie's creators, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, hated the Godzilla IP and wanted to completely transform it into something more to their liking. This made for a smaller, more fragile Godzilla who was unrecognizable in appearance, that had no atomic breath, and who was ultimately defeated by standard human missiles. All things that are cardinal sins for a Godzilla movie, and go.
Yes, that is also correct. Now, a lot of people like to say, well, actually, 98 is bigger than the original Godzilla, so therefore, the size does matter thing makes sense. Okay. By that metric, if you're going by like size, that in realistic terms, animals aren't measured by like how tall they are. They're usually measured by how much they weigh. And the original Showa Godzilla still weighs much more than the 98 Godzilla. And if we're going by size alone, then you have 84 and all the Heisei series still being larger than Godzilla 98. So the whole sizes matters thing was a lie. And yeah, he's pretty much right here with everything that's been stated so far about the changes that were made in 98 are cardinal sins for a Godzilla movie.
Against what used to be staple characteristics of the franchise. Thankfully, longtime fans could see right through this shallow mockery, and were much more numerous than Devlin and Emmerich anticipated. So this resulted in a massive outcry of scathing reviews.
So yeah, scathing reviews, despite the high grosses, considered a financial disappointment due to high market cost.
That would lead the film to barely make any money.
So like, I know that he says the film will just cut it back, so I don't feel like I'm cutting him up too much.
A shallow mockery, and were much more numerous than Devlin and Emmerich anticipated. So this resulted in a massive outcry of scathing reviews that would lead the film to barely make any money.
So yeah, in this case, the film doesn't make a whole lot of money, obviously, because of the scathing reviews, but also because of the fact that there was a lot of marketing that went into this film. And I would bet money on the fact that were this a more traditional Godzilla film, whether more true to the character or a more monster fight type of movie, then more than likely it probably would have made the money that it was expecting to make.
Would also permanently damage the relationship TriStar had with Toho, and would cause Toho to completely break ties with American filmmakers for the next 16 years. Though, oddly enough, they would allow Godzilla 98 to remain canon in their new era, only so that later installments could clarify that this creature was only mistaken as Godzilla, and was actually an imposter, with them bringing in the real Godzilla to effortlessly destroy the fake one.
So I want to put back a few things. It made money, sure, but I'm actually curious. I forget how much the how much the marketing costs, because I think even adding in that much, even if it made money, it didn't make as much money as it was expected to make, along with the fact that it had an inflated budget. So the idea that it made money just doesn't really matter. And also, I think I want to say this is Gojipedia that he's getting this from. And I'll just read it out. So 6 years after the 98 TriStar film Godzilla was released, Toho acquired the rights to the creature from the film and officially rebranded the creature's design as Zilla in any appearances post 2004. So this is something that a lot of Godzilla fans assume is the case. So no, Toho never acquired the rights to 98 and made it Zilla. They always had the rights to the Godzilla character. As per the legal agreements that was signed between them, I forget which clause it is and which paragraph it is, but it's essentially worded as they will have essentially rights to the Godzilla character's name in perpetuity and the character design as well. I'll probably find it. It's like locked away in the 98 folder that I have on this computer. But no, they never like reacquired the rights. It's after 2004 or just a little earlier, if memory serves, that TriStar and Sony no longer have the rights to use Godzilla in terms of officially licensed material. And it's during that time where they are able to use Zilla, because that had just come off the a lot of the re-releases for Godzilla material was coming out. Kitamura wanted to add more monsters. Shogo Tomiyama said that he could use 98, and they were like, oh, cool, let's just use 98. And of course, they never referred to it as Zilla when making this film. They always call it the American Godzilla. And then ultimately, when you finally get to the movie itself, is when you see that he's named Zilla instead of Godzilla. Someone says the only good thing that came from Zilla was Zilla Jr. I think we can agree with that. Sure. I think, however, Godzilla the series is good in spite of 98, not because of it. And I think if you just dealt with a more traditional Godzilla, you'd still get the same series regardless. So it's a happy accident. And giving the film credit by having the series come out, I think is a disservice. And Martin says, look at today where you're getting separate timelines and Godzilla films simultaneously. Sure, but like the quality of at least one side of that isn't the best. But you know,
though oddly enough, they would allow Godzilla 98 to remain canon in their new era, only so that later in
I know later on he'll talk about the Millennium era being an anthology, so I'm not sure why he says in their new era. I guess he just means new era as an era for the company rather than like this series of films, which all don't share continuity with each other, with only a few exceptions. Because in terms of where 98 is canonical to, it's canonical to GMK, and then events similar to 98 are canonical in Final Wars, and ultimately Zilla appearing in Rulers of Earth, Monster Apocalypse do not have any relation to the 98 film, although there's always the whole thing about it being misidentified or someone saying Godzilla's name and ultimately getting cut off, and that's how you get Zilla and Rulers of Earth's name.
installments could clarify that this creature was only mistaken as Godzilla and was actually an imposter, with them bringing in the real Godzilla to effortlessly destroy the fake one. Casual audiences may claim that, in actuality, this movie is not so bad, as long as you remove it from the context of being a Godzilla film, and outside of the clunky dialogue and goofy plotline, it was actually a decent B-movie. However, one cannot simply ignore the very title this movie claims to hold. It calls itself a Godzilla movie, yet it spends the entirety of its runtime being ashamed of its own existence. And for that, this movie was false advertisement, and deserved all the criticism sent its way. Now,
True! Bro, like, hey, it's not all coal here. It's not all L's. Bro actually made a good point. Good for him. I vibe with it.
if only Marvel fans could have as much respect for their property as Godzilla fans. Those movies are full of
I love that. I love what he says right there. And then why was 98 even briefly mentioned in GMK? Because Kaneko had a deep dislike for 98 because it was so disrespectful to Godzilla as a character that he wanted to mention it and make it part of the lore, so that's why. And again, they had rights to the character, so it is official. You're wrong about 98 Zim. Tell him, nope, I am completely right, as always, and objectively so, might I add. And this is like really good that he mentions this, because ultimately this is an argument that 98 fans can never like escape. It's not like a pure, like a total dilemma. There's a 98 dilemma, like argumentation that I've been working on, and I've been testing it here and there. But when someone says, oh, it's a good film, just not a good Godzilla film, you still have to wrap your head around the fact that the film is titled Godzilla. So therefore calling it a bad Godzilla film, but a good film means it is still inherently bad by that metric.
Only Marvel fans could have as much respect for their property as Godzilla fans. Those movies are full of infinitely more self-hatred than Godzilla 98 ever had. Anyhow, in light of this catastrophic failure, Toho felt the need to perform damage control for their brand, so they jump-started the Millennium era as a means of reminding the world what a Godzilla movie is really supposed to look like. Starting in 1999, and being only 4 years removed from the last Toho film, the Millennium era bears a large resemblance to the Heisei era, in that it maintains a more serious tone, while still sustaining the classic monster versus monster B-movie formula.
You know, it's not Megalon Dropkick, and I would love to use the newly created little thing right there, but I cannot. However, I want to go back to what he said just a few seconds earlier.
Sent its way. Now, if only Marvel fans could have as much respect for their property as Godzilla fans. Those movies are full of infinitely...
You know, if Marvel fans had as much respect for their properties Godzilla fans, you know what I say to that? I finally got that fixed. That was something Intestine Inspector whipped up for me, so now I get to use that in streams now as well. Thank you, guys. So, once again, join the Discord, guys, and you can probably get some of your own memes featured on these streams.
More self-hate.
But let's... I just had it. There we go.
Each movie was Millennium film, which to its continuity.
There you go, perfect.
Though it would stand out by taking an anthology-style approach to its continuity, where each Heisei film carried over from one to the next, each new Millennium film would only hold continuity with the 1954 original. All around, each movie was fairly solid, and several stood out.
This is, again, pure nitpick, but he says, like, the only things they shared continuity with is the 54 film, but then talks about how 98 was still like essentially allowed to be within canon just as an imposter. So it contradicts itself, and he says this essentially right over a GMK frame where there is more than one film GMK shares continuity with. So love it.
Out as franchise greats, though they were handicapped by lack of advancements in the special effects department. The film industry at large was rapidly moving to integrate CGI into their movies, so by comparison, Godzilla's suitmation seemed out of style and old-fashioned, especially given that the technique was always viewed as somewhat cheesy since its conception. So even though...
Yeah, this is something we already had contention with earlier, and if we're going to say that suitmation at the time was considered cheesy or goofy, then the large like puppet work from 54 with them, or even the suit from A Creature from the Black Lagoon, would also be pretty poor by that comparison as well. Or like you could apply this also to something like King Kong, where King Kong isn't really believable because you could tell that it is clearly a miniature puppet, and every time Kong moves, you can see the fur move of its own control in ways that don't make sense. And as a result, you know how the thing is being moved, which takes you out of the effect. Like, just without like clarifying how and in what way is it cheesy or unbelievable in comparison to other effects at the time makes this such a poor argument to me.
Though the Millennium era on its own was not that bad, it simply could not compete with the films of the time, and was doomed to meet an early end in 2005 after producing...
I think like we'll just go over this right. I want to go over it all the way from here.
Handicapped by lack of advancements in the special effects department, the film industry at large was rapidly moving to integrate CGI into their movies, so by comparison...
I also love the fact he brings up the Davy Jones scene when the big thing that was notable about that was apparently, this is a rumor and I've heard it said in a lot of places, so I don't know if it actually is the case, but to simulate Jones's tentacles, they used clips of the giant octopus from King Kong versus Godzilla as reference. So funny little tidbit that he includes that, but I don't know if that really is true. I've heard it everywhere, so take it or leave it.
Godzilla's suitmation seemed out of style and old-fashioned, especially given that the technique was always viewed as somewhat cheesy since its conception. So even though the Millennium era on its own was not that bad, it simply could not compete with the films of the time, and
I think that it's true to the degree that they weren't able to compete with films of the time. I think is the fact that one, Godzilla and Kaiju are incredibly niche. It's a foreign film. Budgets are going to be far more limited, and the technology is naturally just going to be further behind in comparison to the mammoth like productions and resources that Hollywood films had. So yeah, Japanese CGI wasn't good enough at the time for Godzilla to be fully CGI, which is why Yamazaki, when doing the Sunset Godzilla, didn't want to do a full CGI Godzilla at the time because he felt that Japan, or at least the technology there, wasn't ready. And now I believe at this point we're seeing greater parity between Japanese animation and American animation in terms of the CGI departments. And it makes me wonder, the further we get along into the future, if we'll see like a greater competition. That seems to be the case now, especially in like other markets. But yeah, especially now with where people are talking about when it comes to Godzilla Minus One, if Minus Zero continues this trajectory with these outstanding visuals, then you could be looking at a very massive reappraisal of like Godzilla's effects as a whole in comparison to the time and budget that they had, but also being looked on more favorably, which is something we talked about a bit when it came to Godzilla, the community, and all of that in the last stream yesterday. So it's definitely promising, but it's also something to consider. At this point, Japan used the same general softwares as Hollywood, such as ZBrush and Maya. Yeah, I think that's another thing to consider, is that software parity is a big thing as well.
Was doomed to meet an early end in 2005 after producing 6 movies. Though if they were to go out, they were determined to go out with a bang, that being Godzilla Final Wars. This movie's plot is that in the far future, aliens are invading and are mind-controlling the Earth's monsters, forcing them to destroy the planet. Humanity has advanced to the point of using super soldiers and spaceships to fight the monsters, but it's not enough. So they need to awaken Godzilla, with the remainder of this movie basically being an all-star showdown where Godzilla takes on many of his best foes from past films, from Anguirus to Gigan to even the 1998 American.
I think because Classic Clear says the -1's VFX hot take aren't as good as the fan base hype it to be. Animation couples Godzilla. In what's regard? I'm curious to see what you have to say on that. Also, who bro lost his entire head. Bro's just decapitated before he even spawns in. Ooh.
For this movie basically being an all-star showdown where Godzilla takes on many of his best foes from past films, from Anguirus to Gigan to even the 1998 American Godzilla, complete with bad CGI and all. Godzilla travels the globe, trashing them all one by one, until eventually he reaches a climactic final battle against his ultimate rival, Ghidorah. Overall, this movie is...
He said the G word as Ghidorah. Again, I now, anytime I hear the word Ghidorah, I just have to like wonder, are you an actual fan? Or are you someone who just kind of watches the films on like ironically? Like I feel like Ghidorah and being that kind of fan seem to go hand in hand. G word, eat this man. It's a Toho slur now.
Is a lot of fun due to its non-stop, over-the-top action that pays homage to the franchise's very long-running legacy. It also finds a clever way of integrating a more exciting human story along the way, as the involvement of super soldiers and aliens means the action never stops no matter who we follow. Oh yeah, and someone behind the scenes had the
I think because he went over to his next point, I want to go. We'll go here because this is gonna give Lau some happiness.
That pays homage to the franchise's very long-running legacy. It also finds a clever way of integrating a more exciting human story along the way, as the
more exciting human story. Sure, more exciting, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the story is better because it's more exciting. And then his walk cycle is so stiff. There are so many shots where Godzilla doesn't blink or breathe. Brayden made a joke saying baby's first walk cycle. I've talked to Brayden about this before, and I actually mentioned this before in the Godzilla -0 hype problem. And I know for a fact that the -1 walk cycle is being done deliberately. And the argument shouldn't be that is a poor walk cycle because it doesn't understand like basic principles when it comes to like how that weight is going to be distributed and where it's going to fall down, because the point deliberately was to make Godzilla feel janky and off in its movements after its mutation. And because I don't even remember if Brayden mentions the walk cycle for pre-mutated Godzilla also having these same issues. I'd have to go back and look at his content to see if he also made that point about both walk cycles, because if they apply the same principles to mutated Godzilla versus pre-mutated Godzilla, then I don't think anyone would have the issues that are listed there. So the argument is less that they failed at making a walk cycle. It's that the walk cycle that they chose to do for story reasons comes off it doesn't create the desired effect I think they were looking for. And honestly, I'd be fine with them changing that out for Godzilla, especially now that he's mutated, so he should come off as less stiff in his like movements.
Involvement of super soldiers and aliens means the action never stops no matter who we follow. Oh yeah, and someone behind the scenes had the genius idea of bringing in Don Fry, of all people, and giving him a katana.
You'd hit a woman.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, Final Wars feels like the ultimate fulfillment of what the Showa era was meant to be. It's got all these over-the-top, exciting monster battles that are presented in a fun way that doesn't take itself too seriously, yet still has enough effort put into it to where you don't feel insulted for giving it the time of day. The effects are...
I don't even know what that means. Like, it's platitudes with no real actual elaboration as to why it's good or bad. And again, this is just disappointing because he's usually really good at explaining these details, but he doesn't here. And I think it's because of the fact that he doesn't really actually care about Godzilla in the sense that it can have deep themes or it should be unironically good. It's that, oh, it's ironically fun to watch, so therefore that's what makes a good Godzilla movie.
Pretty decent, the fights are well choreographed, and the story is a good mix of fun and cheesy. Is it the next Mona Lisa? No, but it's not trying to be. It's just a celebration of Godzilla's history.
It's like this statement always goes to this is something I'd also have to say too, where it's like everyone is conservative about what they know best, and in a lot of cases, in this case specifically, he's very particular about what can be done properly with Marvel. Where with Godzilla here, it's like, oh, well, it is kind of bad, it is kind of stupid, it's not really convincing, but I like it, so therefore it's good. And then it just needs to stop as a sentiment. Even if you're not like super invested in something, you should have the same standards across all the media that you consume. There are better ways to communicate that janky feeling to Godzilla about make Godzilla look ultra stiff. The Godzilla source also feels very stiff. I'd have to rewatch it. I think Minus One is a masterpiece filmmaking, by the way, composition, production, blah, 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 but the animation is one thing that hurts the film for me. I think you're going to have to rewatch it and then come back to me on that, because if you're saying you have to rewatch it, but you're also making the declarative statement that it is also very stiff, I don't know. I feel like you might want to go back and rewatch it again. Yeah. Thank you, Pyro, for joining. We are on part 2. It's crazy.
In the form of an eye-catching spectacle. It's what the heroic side of Godzilla was always meant to be. Now what about the darker side? Well, we wouldn't reach that fulfillment until much later down the line. After Final Wars was released, the Millennium era was put to rest, along with Godzilla as a whole for the next 10 years. Toho was committed to the 10-year hiatus, to the point of dismantling long-running film sets that Godzilla films had been relying on since the 60s. With that in mind, there were still those who wished to see Godzilla stay relevant in ways that went beyond feature-length movies. The most noteworthy of which being a man named Yoshimitsu Banno, the director of the now infamous Godzilla vs. Hedorah in 1971. Banno had returned all these years later in hopes of making an indie short film remake of his past work. He somehow managed to convince Toho to approve of this project, then sought out an American production company to help get said project in motion. Banno eventually caught the attention of Legendary Pictures, the studio which, at the time, had been still celebrating its recent success with Pacific Rim. Their involvement in Banno's short film caused a rapidly growing interest that would see the Godzilla vs. Hedorah short film remake evolve into the second fully feature-length American reboot. Though the first attempt in '98 had been a generational failure, many years had passed since then, and the Legendary was determined to learn from TriStar's mistakes. This newly reformed Godzilla would retain a more familiar design to the original, with nuclear breath being essential. Monster battles would return, and the source material as a whole would be treated with much more reverence. The result was some of the most iconic and beautiful Godzilla scenes ever put to the big screen.
I'm going to stop right there because I know for a fact Legendary would slap my nuts for that. And yeah, he essentially, he's saying Final Wars is a hero. Because Godzilla is more on the protagonist side, then therefore he's by default a hero. I guess that's the point that he's making. Sadly, we can't see it because G14 is ultra dark. I'm not sure if he brighten this up himself or is using one of the downloads where the brightness was changed. Copyright stream's dead. Yeah, no, because it happened once before. I think there was an issue. I want to say, I think it was the Organized Chaos response videos, because I think I covered his 2014 video and I got copyrighted on something like that. If he did, that's interesting, because I know that there is copies that you can get now where the brightness has been altered to more properly reflect what we had seen in theaters. But if he did it himself, that's fine as well.
However, it wasn't all sunshine and roses, as Godzilla 2014 came with its own fair share of flaws, mostly pertaining to the human storyline.
Very true.
Human stories are generally considered an essential component of Godzilla movies, with these stories typically revolving.
Wait, what?
2014 came with its own fair share of flaws, mostly pertaining to the human storyline. Human stories are generally considered an essential component of Godzilla movies.
Yes. Again, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, human stories are essential to a Godzilla film. And I would say not just that, but a good human story should be essential to a Godzilla film.
With these stories typically revolving around humanity's mistreatment of nature, they're coming together to survive these horrific monsters or other similar situations and themes. Though many Godzilla movies often
Also, no. So we'll go back to everything you listed.
stories typically revolving around humanity's mistreatment of nature,
So mistreatment of nature,
they're coming together to survive these horrific monsters
coming together to survive these monsters.
or other similar situations.
And this is similar, I guess, because he's teaming up with his imaginary friend to fight the threats that he's facing in the real world. I don't know why this clip is shown. And I guess I've just gotten more like noticer of it because of the fact that I know Black had mentioned this to me before, but I always feel like relevant images should be on screen whenever you're talking about something. In this case, this doesn't seem very relevant.
And themes, though many Godzilla movies often suffer in this department, as the human storylines often exist as an afterthought, and often turn out to be a boring distraction from otherwise exciting monster fights. 2014 is a textbook example of this very problem. For starters, the advertising was somewhat misleading, in that it teased Bryan Cranston in the leading role. This turned out to be a bait and switch, as his character was killed off in the first act of the film, leaving his much less exciting son, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, to carry the lead for the remainder of the runtime.
And I think it's also been stated that Johnson never really cared about doing this film in the first place, which is just another big problem when you're working in the industry. If you don't care about the projects that you're on, if I'm a director and I hear that, or I even just get an inkling of that, I would genuinely just fire you or find some way to get you off the project so I can salvage what I am working on so we can actually have a decent film on our hands.
With the brunt of his scenes involving him loosely following Godzilla around with a lifeless expression on his face, while nothing noteworthy happens on screen. Part of why this happened is a result of Gareth Edwards' directing style, in which the entirety of his movies just serve as build-up for the grand finale. Rogue One
Let's see what he says about Rogue One.
Suffered from this very same issue. You have to sit through 2 hours of slow, mediocre setup in order to enjoy 10 minutes of the greatest cinema ever made.
I wouldn't say that. Like,
of slow, mediocre setup in order.
Mediocre how specifically? I mean, like, I love the fact we got to see a Hammerhead take on a Star Destroyer, but yeah, Rogue One, I generally say is one of his better pieces of film. I'd say probably Monsters and Godzilla follow it, with Rebirth kind of being my least favorite out of the stuff I've seen from him. The Creator, I only saw the CGI from it. It really didn't hook me in a way to where I wanted to go see it.
To enjoy 10 minutes of the greatest cinema ever made. Godzilla himself only has about 10 minutes of screen time in this entire feature-length movie. Still, in spite of these issues, 2014 managed to be enjoyable enough to become a solid box office and critical success, thus redeeming Hollywood after the 1998 disaster. This success opened the door for Legendary to expand this movie into a fully fledged franchise, with plans to bring in other classic monsters, as well as a new crossover with King Kong. But before we can talk about that, we have to return to Japan, as Toho is now ready to begin making their own Godzilla movies yet again, the first of which being Shin Godzilla, an experimental standalone movie that serves as the final Godzilla movie to ever use suitmation, though this time with...
That's just straight up not true. Shin never had a suit in it. The closest you could get to arguing that there was suitmation in Shin is because they did mocapping for Shin. There was no suit in Shin. Just like how people assume that there's the animatronic that was used in Shin. There was an animatronic made, but there never was a actual like animatronic used on screen.
The assistance of CGI to make the effects a bit smoother and less cheesy. Shin Godzilla takes a modern spin on Godzilla's nuclear origins. Where the original was inspired by the World War II bombings, Shin takes inspiration from the 2011 Fukushima disaster. Also, like the original, this movie would not feature any monster battles, instead being more of a political commentary with elements of horror. We follow several wings of the slow-moving modern Japanese government as they struggle to counter the rapidly evolving threat of Godzilla. Being so political means the story is inherently slower paced and less exciting than the more typical monster versus monster battles. Though, unlike 2014, the slower pace works much more effectively in Shin Godzilla, as the writing is deep and substantial enough to hold interest. Each scene is...
I know definitely this is something a lot of people like to talk about, especially on this channel, about not liking Shin's political stuff. Although I would say, like, well, substantively what they are talking about, I do find interesting, at least myself.
full of detailed dialogue that advances and influences the plot in such a way where you could legitimately believe that this is how a government body would realistically handle such a crisis. It's a very efficient and engaging movie that's truly one of a kind. It seems apparent that Toho's extended break was well worth it, as the effort and focus of this movie is much stronger than the more formulaic and cheesy films of the past. The effects
I do wonder too that because this film is talking about more quote-unquote serious highbrow topics, that's a big reason why a lot of people really love to glaze this film. And the creator says Shin has absolutely no ties to 311. He has no ties to the origins. Shin additionally only has such allegorical imagery for the first half of the film, which would also mean like it is pretty like similar to other Godzilla films that talk a little bit about like a theme and stuff where they become far more formulaic by the end because it's ultimately a rush to stop Godzilla.
Also see a significant upgrade, with Shin utilizing a combination of CGI and suitmation in order to...
Again, Shin never had suits. Shin never had suits. I don't know. I could understand people assuming that like Shin had an animatronic because there's at least people actually... There's shots and like behind the scenes stuff of Shin's animatronic, but I don't get why people assume that Shin had a suit. It never had a suit. I guess it's because of the fact that they assume, oh, Godzilla's always done with a man in a suit. It's from Japan. Maybe it's a man in a suit. And then there's shots where you can clearly tell it's CGI. So they assume that's the case as to why. And I do know, if I recall as well, that Shin design wise, like texture was supposed to resemble the material that was used to make the Godzilla suit. So that's why people assume that's a man in a suit. Because I've never understood this argument, or at least understood why people assume that Shin had a suit, because Shin never did have one. Shin had mocap, and I guess because it's mocap, you could assume that, oh, it's got to be a man in the suit if it's having man in the suit style movements. Yeah, like, it's not common for people to mention that Shin had a suit, but I've heard it enough to be confused as to why that even became a thing in the first place.
To bring about a more familiar, yet scary, and serious Godzilla. Godzilla himself is reinterpreted as a fish-like creature.
I love how he says, we'll do this again, watch.
Significant upgrade, with Shin utilizing a combination of CGI and suitmation in order to bring about a more familiar, yet scary, and serious Godzilla. Godzilla himself...
More scary and serious Godzilla cuts to this shot right here. Yeah, I've never really liked the Shin evolutions all that much. I liked them back in the day and I felt that it was fun, but the more I've really thought about it, I have not. Yeah, the mocap guy had a mask of Shin, maybe that plus the animatronic, I guess. But even then, I don't even think people know that the guy who did the mocap had a Shin Godzilla mask on when he performed. I know, if I recall correctly, I haven't watched that video of mine in a bit when I talked about the Forgotten Godzilla suit actors. Either I did technically include him, but I mentioned that it's mocap, not an actual suit.
Himself is reinterpreted as a fish-like creature that had been cursed with a painfully rapid evolution as a result of too much radiation exposure caused by Japan's poor waste management. And it is fascinating and terrifying to watch this unorthodox creature grow and evolve in horrifying, powerful ways, while the government pursues increasingly hopeless efforts in trying to stop it. Overall, Shin Godzilla stands out as one of the best Godzilla films ever made, and shows just how much untapped potential this franchise still has. Meanwhile,
I guess like in this case here,
Godzilla films ever made, and shows
this could be a shot where I guess like because it's like, oh, stiff Godzilla, feet moving, therefore man in the suit. I think like honestly, if you assume Godzilla in Shin is a man in the suit, then I believe that's probably just painted by your own perceptions and low opinions of Godzilla as a whole. So it's not even just like this is just not true. It's also, I feel like, kind of indicative of where you stand as someone talking about Godzilla. I know this was directed to a leader, but do you think Shin is more of a disrespectful departure of the character than 98? I would say no. I'd still say no.
Just how much untapped potential this franchise still has. Meanwhile, across the pond, two more relevant films are being added to Godzilla's history, those being Kong Skull Island and yet another King of the Monsters. These two films would carry the same continuity as 2014's Godzilla, and would serve as Legendary's attempt to cash in on the MCU hype train by establishing their own Monsterverse.
Would it really be cashing on the MCU's hype train when Godzilla's had two cinematic universes at this point? 3 if you want to include like the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy. So wouldn't it just be, oh, an American studio is doing a Godzilla universe like they used to do instead of cashing in on the MCU? That could still be like part of the motivation. But like the idea that, oh, Legendary only made the Monsterverse to cash in on the MCU is weird because Godzilla predates it.
And with these movies leading us into the modern era, let's take a little more time to break down their quality. Starting with Skull Island, this acted as a Kong solo film that would generate hype for an eventual crossover. It featured some fun summer blockbuster theatrics, with a star-studded cast of characters along for the ride. And overall, this movie was just okay. The effects were decent, and it was entertaining enough, but nothing stood out as overly remarkable, with this being a bit of a step down from the 2014 flick. The main issue is that it seemed to try too hard to be a Marvel movie, to the point where it failed to create a unique identity for itself, thereby making it become forgettable. Each character could be described as the quippy, sarcastic one, with no one really sticking out in a profound or compelling way.
Granted, I haven't seen Skull Island in some time, but let me just go back to this cast. I know John C. Reilly definitely has similar like Marvel movie type of dialogue because he's kind of like the quirky, stranded guy. And I just don't like quirky characters in general nowadays because of their oversaturation in Marvel, as well as just millennial era films.
As the quippy, sarcastic one, with no one.
But like these guys, like they have like one interaction with him, and they're just like kind of like awkward because he calls them skull crawlers, and like we have to be like, oh, haha, it's such an edgy, stupid name. But she doesn't really quip. He doesn't really quip. He doesn't really like out of the characters you could have picked, these aren't really the ones.
One really sticking out in a profound or compelling way. The action is a bit more redemptive.
I'd say it's got good effects, but consistently photorealistic.
And allowed the movie to be above average, but overall, in a crowded market of very similar films, Skull Island got lost in the shuffle. The issues of this movie also get exacerbated as time goes on, like with King of the Monsters, a movie with the right ideas but poor execution. King of the Monsters attempts to expand on the success of 2014 by reintroducing other classic Godzilla
Waiter, more quips, please.
Monsters, and giving them the same hyperreal effects that worked so well in the last century. And they did an okay job. Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah are back, and with so many monsters on screen, there seemed to be a quantity over quality approach in terms of spectacle. Unlike 2014, where we saw very short but perfect Godzilla scenes, there are many monster scenes this time around, but they are noticeably less polished and even sloppy at times. Plus, Mothra's redesign in particular is pretty terrible, looking nothing like her old self. Meanwhile, the other monsters are rather spot on. King Ghidorah especially is the highlight of this movie, being as powerful and scary as ever. His presence really points out that the biggest appeal to these legendary movies is showing what these old Zootmation monsters could look like in a more realistic portrayal. Unfortunately, any appeal these monsters bring is greatly brought down by the heavy anchor that is the human cast. The human storyline in this movie.
Some Dream K was also bad. Elaborate more if you could, Lau, because I'm not sure what you're referencing. And in terms of what he said so far, at least in regards to CGI, there's overall comparing 2014 to Cotham's VFX, 2014 definitely has the better effects, without a doubt. I would say I like Cotham's action more, but 2014 just visually has better effects.
Movie is a competition to see who in this bloated cast can be the most annoying.
Humans have been the dominant species for thousands of years, and look what's happened. Overpopulation.
Pollution. War.
Open the shields.
Oh, yeah, sure. Let's bring him in for a beer. You out of your goddamn mind?
Did you say gonorrhea?
Huh? Ghidorah.
And
oh, we got the gonorrhea joke.
Like all the worst Godzilla movies, these people take way too much screen time because it's like, I want to see giant lizards shoot laser beams at each other, not some
There we go. Well, he just admitted that's what he wants. That's what he wants to see. That's all. I'd be disingenuous for me to say that's all he wants to see because he just praised Shin for not being that. But it's very clear, and especially the arguments that he makes later on about what the Monsterverse should be, is that he doesn't really care about there actually being a like well thought out or engaging story. It's just about the spectacle. And this needs to be called out. I do not want to just see the lizard with the laser beam. I want to see like a well-made modern American Godzilla film with a good story and good monster action. These things aren't mutually exclusive. Stop making it feel like these things are mutually exclusive, because they aren't.
Boring girl pouting about her mommy issues while bearing the most powerful plot armor in the universe.
Yeah, as he says right here, JDF says, give me story with spectacle. Yeah, exactly.
I want to dig deeper into why this is an issue, but I should first point out that these problems only became more prevalent as time goes on. With the following two Godzilla Kong films, we see a downward trend in cheapening CGI, offering the second worst looking Mechagodzilla design, only behind.
Like, how is it bad? How is Monsterverse Mechagodzilla's design bad? I really want to know.
And the Godzilla Earth anime. I mean, just look at that. The fight scenes are far sloppier and significantly less memorable in comparison to the instantly iconic scenes from 2014. Instead of getting to a point of looking almost realistic, these monsters now just flop around like messy cartoon blobs. The human stories also continuously reach new lows, as most of them only exist to be exposition repositories or desperate attempts at weak comic relief. The plot lines are predictable and boring. The only way to enjoy these movies is to turn your brain off and clap when the gray blob and the brown blob dance around. In other words,
yes, I don't really have a whole lot to say in this case, but you're saying this video feels like a parody. In a lot of ways, yes, even if I do agree with some of the parody of this. But damn, I missed the Conan part. He doesn't really say a whole lot about the Conan part.
the Monsterverse is essentially the new Showa era. It's just as low effort, just as cheesy, and just as poorly written, with the only difference being that the Monsterverse throws way more money around. Many people enjoy these movies due to these somewhat nostalgic similarities, and accept these movies for the low-level entertainment that they are. That's fine and all, though I can't help but to feel somewhat unsatisfied. The Showa era is widely recognized as something of an in-joke amongst the fanbase, where
What? I'm sorry, what? And let me what? What?
satisfied. The Showa era is widely recognized as something of an in-joke amongst the fanbase, where we recognize its many faults and celebrate it due to its unique brand of extreme ridiculousness that can't be found anywhere else. However,
So is that, yeah, that's essentially a more complicated way of saying I only like these films ironically. There's actually really nothing of value to put there.
just because this era is remembered fondly, doesn't mean we should just throw whatever low-effort crap on screen, since that is what was done in the past. Especially since the newer movies are a different breed of terrible, where instead of embracing their negative aspects because they're fun, we have to repress the negative attributes.
Well, what does fun mean? Like, what do we mean by when we say, oh, this is fun? It's always fun when Zim is bamboozled. Yeah, because it's like, they'll be like, oh, this is fun. That's fun. Well, what do you mean by fun? What is fun to you?
Attributes, because they are nothing more than cringy distractions that take away from the fun. And with how much investment is going into these films, between fans and producers alike, it feels like there should be a way to enjoy Showa-style Godzilla films without doing the bare minimum.
I mean, hey, if they're like, by this logic, these films are actually great because they're doing the bare minimum and they're actually making money, unfortunately, with GXK is anything to go by. So, yes, by the arguments that you're providing, I would say, sir, that you are adding to the problem that you are complaining about.
For starters, these movies need to figure out their tone. Elements of these movies tend to maintain a sense of realism and practicality, such as portraying Mothra's twin fairies as normal twin humans, while in other instances, the tone is completely bonkers, like the fact that there is a hidden society of giant ape men that are governed by a tyrannical ape ruler who has a pet ice dragon. Like, if you want to be...
Yeah, it's almost like... It is really good to actually have like a central like vision, as well as probably I think having a central director would be better, because then ultimately you'd have a more cohesive vision on things, which is why I'm excited for -0. Yeah, well, it seems he wants to watch Kaiju Battle Royale, and only if it involves classic kaiju. Essentially, yeah. And I like a lot of like touristy normie type fans are, that's really kind of just it for them for the most part.
Be ridiculous, then just go for it, and don't half-ass it with these lukewarm attempts at practical realism. The humor is misplaced, and feels like it was written by people who are embarrassed to be working on silly monster movies, so they feel the need to make fun of it.
Yeah, it's like, and again, this is another tell. It's like, oh, these are silly monster movies. So therefore, he'll say essentially is that just really just dive into the silliness. I don't think he really thinks that these films could be done seriously because ultimately he doesn't really have too much to say about 2014. And the most he can really say about realism is that it helps in terms of bringing the characters to life better. Which is like, that's ultimately super depressing to think about.
It any chance they get. Instead, they should build up the story and laugh alongside the movie, not add.
No, I'll let the whole thing play through because again, it's more depressing.
Any chance they get. Instead, they should build up the story and laugh alongside the movie, not add it. If we look at
that would still just by nature be laughing at the movie. If you really think you're just making a stupid, silly monster movie and you want to laugh with the film, you were essentially being like, yeah, haha. The only difference is that I'm actually like in on it. I know this is stupid and I know this is silly instead of unintentionally making something stupid and silly. The end result's still the same, which is just awful.
Godzilla's history, we can find that many strange characters have come and gone over the years, up to and including mad scientists, all kinds of aliens.
What?
Characters have come and gone over the years, up to and including mad scientists.
Yes, Serizawa is a mad scientist, a man who was deeply traumatized by the creation that he made and ultimately decided, yeah, it's better for me to kill myself in order for the world to be at peace and not create an even worse arms race. Yes, this guy is a mad scientist who really fits the archetype of the mad scientist. You know, those characters who make these like incredibly dangerous doomsday weapons, want to take over the world and do all these crazy things. Not to mention like his general mood throughout the entire film is exceptionally hyper subdued. Like, what? What do you mean? What are you talking about? What? Just yeah, yes, truly. Serizawa, the subdued, regretful, suicidal, mad scientist.
Have at it. But I do not have time for your candy-ass hero shit.
Scientists, all kinds of aliens, super soldiers, fairies, subterrestrials, and robots, amongst others.
Wait.
All kinds of aliens, super soldiers, fairies, subterrestrials.
That's so weird that he brings the gemstone Megalon clip. Like, if you're gonna like insult the franchise, just use like Antonio from Megalon at that point. Just bring in just show the clip of the Utopians from Megalon because they just look inherently far more goofier than this, where this doesn't like on its own doesn't look too crazy. This looks like a pretty bog standard like sci-fi film or like sci-fi fantasy film on its own.
And robots, amongst others. Modern writers should lean into this and generate fun human stories by creating the most fun human characters.
What does fun mean? What does it mean?
You gnome fuck!
Giant monster battles are a naturally absurd concept for a movie, so why not include equally absurd characters? Now, this isn't a...
Yeah, so essentially, giant monster fights are slop, so therefore just have slop, but make it good slop because slop is fun, but don't make it slop. But I want it to be fun. It's a walking contradiction.
Say that these characters must be wall-to-wall comedians. No, there's still room for sincere stories and arcs. This is simply an attempt to ease the transition from monsters to men, so we don't have a sudden snooze or cringe fest anytime the monsters aren't on screen. And in honing in on Godzilla's legacy, it should be noted that there's still an untapped well of potential in revisiting more of the classic monsters and giving them a fresh coat of CGI paint.
Yeah, guys, I just realized this is literally the 05 argument. This is literally the 05 argument. But guys, understand we need to have more modern takes on the classic Toho monsters. That's literally what it is. This is all the guy wants.
Assuming the filmmakers won't be lazy or cheap with the effects, they should lean in harder on building up the Monsterverse lineup with other familiar faces, like Anguirus, Gigan, and absolutely Jet Jaguar. It would be a ton of fun seeing what each of these old Suitmation monsters could look like with the very best of modern special effects behind them. No one cares about this OC Edgelord monkey. Bring in cooler, more familiar monsters.
I mean, yes, no one cares about Scar King because Scar King is a slop villain, but no, this does not mean the 05 argument is a good argument.
Monsters like Destroya, and don't introduce them through some annoying middle-aged mom. Have Martians, lizard people, or some other bizarre... introduce them through some annoying middle-aged mom, have Martians, lizard people.
Yeah, those are no, they're not.
Or some other bizarre beings set the stage as creative and exciting villains, with equally exciting heroes trying to stop them. A photo of normal twin ladies? Boring. Actual tiny twin fairies that can telepathically communicate with monsters? Now those are some memorable characters. More of them, please. Now bear in mind that these ideas are all being pitched with the knowledge that Toho is still producing its own, much more serious and reverent Godzilla films at the same time. So given that the desire for more legitimate and deep Godzilla films is being fulfilled, these legendary movies can afford to relax a bit and have some more experimental fun. Now, speaking of Toho, they have...
So yes, because we have -1 and Shin, we can still get slop that is acceptable.
Produced one more relevant movie for this video's discussion, and arguably one of the most impactful Godzilla movies ever made, Godzilla Minus One. Made with a fraction of the budget for a standard Hollywood blockbuster, Minus One has managed to solidify itself as the ultimate Godzilla film, being able to display a deep, heartfelt message in a similar manner as the original 1954 movie, while being able to utilize modern special effects in a way where the movie doesn't suffer from being as silly or cheesy. There are certainly lighthearted moments, but they are very much intentional. On the flip side, Minus One manages to thrive where most other Godzilla movies suffer, in that it manages to create a wildly deep and fascinating human story, to the point where you may get so invested in their drama that you might just forget that this is a giant monster movie.
This is literally everything that's been said by every video essayist from every side of the political spectrum when it comes to -1. Like, take a shot, guys. Every time you hear someone say, man, the story is so good, it almost makes you forget that you're watching a Godzilla film. Like, please do that. And I know for a fact you will die from alcohol poisoning. But you know what it makes me feel?
Off to hang myself.
That's all it makes me feel. Just I feel like I'm going crazy because I feel like I'm hearing the same things every single day, in and out.
The basic premise is that World War II has just ended, and a kamikaze pilot returns to the ruins of his hometown after abandoning his position as a suicide bomber. Though as the looming threat of Godzilla begins to emerge, this pilot and the rest of Japan must learn to de-radicalize themselves and fight to preserve human life instead of throwing their lives away for vain causes.
Well, no, it's not about de-radicalizing themselves. What? No, they we're not dealing with like a population for them, like outside of like Sumiko. I don't know. Like that's the only person that's like kind of radicalized, but she's like acting out of grief, not out of like patriotic fervor. There's no character who really is like that. Like what? I guess you could make that as like a tertiary theme to the story. Is like you're getting to see the side of Japan that isn't like radicalized in this way, and you get to see them as like just people instead of like caricatures, I guess. But what? Okay, I think you said this wrong. Okay, I can't like the -1 human plot was so good. I was hoping Godzilla appeared less so we could get back to the human characters. I just reword that because I think I get what you're meaning, but I don't. Oh, look, the Roach is in. Hey, he made some of the same arguments that you like to make, so I guess you guys are in good company.
Pauses. And just on the surface, you don't need a giant monster for this movie to be interesting. A cowardly kamikaze pilot trying to cope with survivor's guilt.
Let me just go back to this right here.
Need a giant monster for this movie to be interesting. A cowardly kamikaze pilot trying to
Nope, I have to go a little bit further back.
And fight to preserve human life instead of throwing their lives away for vain causes. And just on the surface, you don't need a giant monster for this movie to be interesting.
Like, sure, yes, but like, again, that almost tacitly is saying yes. Unfortunately, we have to deal with the fact that this is a Godzilla film, but let's make sure the story is good. Like, it feels like such a backhand and compliment to this film that I've heard so many times. The only character de-radicalized is the kid who's shown not to understand what they're actually doing and going against Godzilla, and he even came back. I don't even say he's like radicalized. He's more like he gets a proper understanding of like the circumstances of war, but like radicalized because he's not really like a Japanese like Japan hardliner. He's like I'd say like he is naive, and it's through his encounters with Godzilla he becomes less naive, but still carries with him like that youthful energy that is important to a nation that is rebuilding, because Japan would need people like him in order to come back and grow as an economy and become what it ultimately becomes. But I think that because he grew up in wartime, ultimately that energy is put in a less than constructive, it's like put towards a less than constructive manner, and ultimately you see it in a better sense. Yeah, but radicalized, I would say those are two different things though, but they could be intertwined, I guess. If that's what you mean by it, then I'll grant it, yeah.
A cowardly kamikaze pilot trying to cope with survivor's guilt is already an incredibly fascinating concept on its own, but the fact that Godzilla is the antagonist of this story brings it from being just fascinating to being one of the greatest movies ever made, far exceeding even their own previous critical success with Shin Godzilla, as well as the dozens upon dozens of other films that make up this franchise's near-century-long history. The quality of the legendary films seem embarrassing when compared to the absolute gold that Toho has been able to generate with a fraction of the budget, though oddly enough, the existence of
we got budget talks as well.
Shin or Minus One may not have been possible without the legendary films, given that more experimental Godzilla movies have failed in the past due to straying too far from the working formula. But in this case,
honestly, like, I'm super curious, how would he rationalize Godzilla versus Biollante straying too much from the formula, other than the fact that he knows that Biollante underperformed? Because I don't think he can actually explain that.
the safer, more formulaic movies are already being worked on under the Monsterverse umbrella, thus allowing Toho to be the ones to make more dynamic and experimental movies without straying from the mainstream demand for monsters.
But is Minus One really that experimental? It just seems more in line with 54. So I don't know. Like, I don't get what he's saying at that point either.
Monster battles. That doesn't excuse Legendary from not having to do better with their projects, but still, the coexistence of these two wildly different Godzilla franchises has allowed Godzilla to reach more popularity than ever before in his very long career, going from a niche cult classic to a mainstream award-winning powerhouse, with no signs of slowing down on either front. Hope you enjoyed this deep dive into how these two Godzillas came
Deep dive. Deep dive. Like, okay, a deep dive on this. Oh, okay. Sure, buddy. Whatever you say. That's just disappointing. I'm really disappointed because man's done good work before. Like, he's done a lot of good work before. His Daredevil stuff's been good. His Ironheart stuff's good. I like his Thor stuff. His Marvel MCU like villain problems have been good. The Ahsoka stuff's been good. But I yeah, a deep dive. I guess like by extension, I think both films are longer than like usually some of his other videos, which usually are about like 9-10 minutes or so. But deep dive, this is not like. His Ahsoka videos like are longer than these are, but I wouldn't like those are deep dives. This is surface level. And yeah, I guess it's like we think about it like, why does this always happen to kaiju? And I think it's because of the fact that like people just don't buy into kaiju. People already have a perception about the kaiju genre as a whole. And as a result, they're just gonna, go off and sort of be like, oh, whatever. It's cheesy. It's stupid. I like it because it's cheesy and stupid. I don't know why I like it, but I do. And I want that to be the case. And I feel like he did more lip service to like this being good rather than like actually doing the legwork that he usually does with these like movies and content that he covers about why this is good or not. It's disappointing. It really is. Or, oh yeah, God forbid this man ever touch Gamera or Ultraman or Kamen Rider. Yeah, like, I don't think a lot of people usually cover anything beyond just Godzilla because Godzilla is the most popular thing. Yeah, it's the animation probably no one takes it seriously. I think that's also, yeah, true too. I wonder why that seems to be the case, that animation is not taken seriously, especially when there's a lot of animation like throughout the years that has been taken seriously, should be taken seriously, but we just sentiment wise we don't see it. I think it also has to do with the saturation of things in animation, especially when it comes to adult animation, where almost anytime there's like a quote unquote adult show, it's like a comedy, a parody, or just poorly made. Like almost everything's like a Family Guy, American Dad style show with like crass, lowbrow humor instead of something that is supposed to be taken seriously or have some kind of reverence or sincerity behind it. Which is why I appreciate Primal so much, because it is a show that revolves purely, or not purely, at least mostly on visual storytelling, and it has a sincere story that it wants to tell. Yeah, like violence, I think is fine. It's like a tool like anything else. But I think oftentimes nowadays, because we've gotten out of that like incredibly edgy era of the internet, people just look back on like anything's violent or too serious as being quote unquote edgy. That's at least something else that comes to mind whenever I think about that as well. But I guess in terms of bringing everything back, I think that there needs to be more people in the community who respond to takes like this. Not necessarily in the same way, although, hey, I don't mind the competition, but there needs to be a greater desire to have the discussions about the films themselves, or at least like more in-depth analysis of them, which is why I liked what Big Action Bill did with a lot of his analysis of the films as well. But I think more of that can at least create a greater bulwark in terms of blocking out this kind of content, or at least getting backlash towards this kind of content, because it does get annoying to some degree, and you just kind of have to live with it one way or another. But I'm not sure. I know some people said they might have a few things they want to say. I may open that up to do like another stream about things in general, since we're about to hit about the same hour mark as we did last time for the other one. Vagabond documentary was a freaking lifesaver. I think I saw his video once. I don't remember like liking it all that much, because I think there's a few issues I had about it as well. How long ago was that video? Bag of Bones. I think it was like Bag of Bones Godzilla. Yeah, there it is. Oh, yeah, the Kaijuology video. And what was you were talking about the Human Cast video? Which channel did that? Blender is dying. GNG. The Skidora model's killing my laptop. Oh, hey, nice that you're doing animation. I'm still trying to learn Blender. Oh, no, I see it Minecraft, which is about the human dilemma in kaiju media. I might rewatch that one, because I remember more of the Kaijuology one. So I think when I do end the stream, that's the video that I'll take a look at. But actually, that might be something interesting for us to do, is that we all watch that and then give our thoughts about like the points that were raised, rather than like the usual Zimcast sort of pause, talk, laugh at kind of beat. Acno, I hope unknowingly is live. Yeah. Has anyone got any updates on that? Does anyone know what's been going on? Anything in regards to that? I think now like I can check Instagram, since we've kind of wind things down. Monica, if you're saying yeah, as in like that like there's an update or something, or yeah, just as you want to like cover the human dilemma video. Let's see. I mentioned Goji Guy. I doubt he'll respond. And I don't see any stories from him. I might just do like a quick run through like all the story stuff that I've seen. I don't remember if Unknowingly has an Instagram. That's Unite Gods. So that's Unite's post on it. Unknowingly presents Kaiju Combat. Yeah, I don't think he ever had an Instagram, so I don't think anyone's able to follow him there. Let me see. No, I'm not seeing any reports on like what's going on. Nope. Yeah, seems to be. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, unfortunately. What happened when he was very disgusting. Yeah, unfortunately. So I know Rick tweeted about it. Did he? We'll go to Twitter then. I can at least actually. I think I have him. Let me see if I can DM him here. Updates on I think Minecraft, that's you. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm praying. Yeah, so he doesn't know either, unfortunately. Yeah, that's unfortunate. What's happened to him? I know he made a community post today, but then something happened before that. I know, at least in terms of that stuff, he had they had like slewer side scares before, and I know I forget who it was. I think someone had mentioned it before that they were all fake, and I'm not sure if that drama had spilled over again into this or if some new behind the scenes stuff's occurred. Again, I don't really follow him, so it's anything that's involved him drama wise has been super tertiary, unfortunately. But yeah, I think this is the first time he's done anything or at least said anything on his YouTube, unless there's been posts he's made that have been deleted, which is, again, it's unfortunate. Man, let me text Goji guy and see if he responds or if he knows anything. And I guess right now what we can do too is I can let the do some invites kind of open up for a little bit, just to end it off on a slightly more related but I guess more positive note. So yeah, links in the Discord. I know the Discord's in the description if you want to join and want to say anything in regards to at least this video here. But we'll probably only just do this for a couple minutes, and then we'll probably end things off. Yeah, has there been? Yeah, suspending disregards to unknowingly. Apparently, I heard it was actually because this time he had a negative interaction with the Murder Drones community since he was doing an analog horror series of that franchise. Oh, that's unfortunate. I've also, I don't know, a lot of the indie animation stuff, just community-wise and this content-wise, doesn't appeal to me. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's because of something like that. That community, Murder Jones, never really appealed to me. But we got Kuru.
Are we sure this wasn't a parody?
It literally does feel like a parody, but I do know at least on. Let me just go to his comments, not his comments, the description. Yeah, the description says, press the wrong one. I claimed that this channel would now be dedicated to Godzilla movies because the MCU was getting too terrible, but that was just some April fooling. However, if you want to see more videos branch outside the Marvel umbrella, make your voice heard by liking this video and subscribing. So no, this literally was an attempt to branch out and talk more about other things besides Marvel.
Fuck.
Yeah, literally. Which again, and we have Devik in the house as well.
Yo.
Don't you just love it when one of your favorite channels just produces absolute slop? It's pure fraud watch.
It's me whenever Zimzilla makes a 98 hate video.
I mean, hey, at least difference being is that I'm right.
No.
No, I am. Bro's not gonna be able to survive the 98 to love when it comes out in response to Crispy Vic's video.
I don't know who that is, bro.
Yeah, the Crispy Vic, also known as the Kaiju Knots, Resonant 98 punching bag receiver. Oh no.
Sounds like a guy with taste. He knows his movies.
No, I don't think so. I think he's a little slop brained.
No. But
Back again.
with regards
Welcome
to
back again later.
the two videos, I want to say I think they fit the Marcel definition of like actual slop, because it feels like regurgitated factoids and analysis that, since I heard you say it seems like a genuine branching out, that it's trying to be informative but regurgitates like like decades
the
long
truisms,
myths
yeah.
and stuff, misinterpretations,
Mm-hmm.
stuff that like surface level, but it's like surface level stuff that's like not even true or correct in
Yeah.
that sense.
Hi.
It is the Lao man himself. But yeah, I know, like, it's really funny because now that when you go to slop, the first thing comes up is AI slop, which honestly, I have a very low opinion of you. If you say AI slop as a term, it's just say slop. But I got two people muted. Lau, any thoughts on what we saw and what we witnessed today?
Like normally I'm just like so passive towards like nothing burgers like this. But I never accuse anyone of this, but I really feel like this guy just read a bunch of wiki articles and didn't actually watch like almost any of the movies, which like
Literally.
if you're going to make a video, like I'm expecting you to watch at least most or even half of them, right?
Also, not to cut you off, but I think this is the first legitimate Twitch viewer I've seen who's actually commented. If you are the coveted single Twitch viewer, there's no way I'm gonna be able to say that name correctly, but I appreciate you nonetheless. The man speaks.
I think his name is Mason.
We know who
Well,
it is. There's a face to it.
There's a face to it now. That is my one Twitch boy. Empire is on as well.
Howdy.
Howdy. Oh, and we got another one. The world of Minecraft.
Hi.
Hi, Minecraft.
I just got out of class.
What I would say is like, isn't it funny how all of these fucking people that are like big fish are the ones that actually get, how do I explain this? The ones that are not even like related to the fucking fandom or the franchise or know anything about it are the ones that come in, make us nothing burger video, and they just get a fuck ton of views.
Yeah, no, it's no, the thing that surprised me, because I was, while watching this video, after this, I'm starting to think back to real life Ryan's retrospective on Gamera, and I'm just like, what the fuck? How?
Yeah, dude, the people who deserve views don't get them, and then this fucking slop is like people like really like consuming nothing burgers, and that just makes me wonder, like, is it like something that you put on because you're like, oh, like someone likes Godzilla, it's going mainstream, and you just put it on while you're like cooking?
Well, no,
Yeah,
I guess
or
it's like,
cleaning.
I think it's like one of those cases where you have
Hang
people.
on.
Wait.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, like, I think it's less that and more the like, you have these critics who usually are pretty in depth with their chosen field, but then the moment they branch off to something else, you can really tell it is not their field of expertise because the analysis and the facts that they bring up are oftentimes so basic or so like widely known that they're probably making these videos to try to appeal to as many people as possible so that they don't get a dud of a video that affects their channel.
Yeah, like for me, while watching, I said this in the chat. You didn't call it out, but I said, would you say any of this to a Marvel movie? Like, if I started talking about like Thor Ragnarok or something and started saying this about Thor Ragnarok, would you respond? Would you be fine with me saying that, or would you stand up for Would you stand up for Thor Ragnarok and say no? This is objectively incorrect because X, Y, Z, or other similar things that you were saying throughout the video. It's a weird double standard to me.
To me, the weirdest part is that, it's not only that. It almost feels like a complete and like on purpose milking of this, because it's like, okay, so
would
he's
this
not even making
actually
like
be an
one
example?
video.
Would this actually be an example of quote unquote grifting?
Kuru, there's a lot of noise on your background.
Sorry. Right, I'm at work.
Again, it's the Transformers orgy on the background.
But yeah, like
what I was going to say very fast is just like, it's even more insulting that he like makes multiple videos, like, and then he has the balls to call it a deep dive.
Yeah, like it's just fucking stupid.
Yeah, like if normally I'm able to tolerate this and just like completely ignore them because it's like, okay, someone made a video, but this guy is just going to make like 3, and so far he's making a fuck ton of mistakes. Then he's saying like common sense kind of stuff that it's, like it's okay that he gets some things right, but that should be like the bare minimum, and he doesn't actually reach it either.
Yeah, no,
like
because like. It's all the stuff that we've seen all over again. This is exactly what I was talking about when I say people do not trust the genre or respect it. And this is why I hope, like, I am praying that -0 ends up being good. But also, like, proves every sentiment here incorrect so that people can actually look back at the genre and start saying, wait, this has been good the entire time?
The thing is, I think you have the right expectations, but for the wrong reasons. I wouldn't do that for people like this dude. Like, honestly, if you showed him the Gamera trilogy, will he even be able to appreciate it? Or would he be like, oh, that's cool, flying turtle? Because if you cannot even show him that and he cannot even appreciate it, and he even watches something like -1, and he thinks that it's about de-radicalizing people, it's like, what's the point of even putting the effort to try to impress someone like this?
Exactly. Fuck, he didn't say jack shit on GMK.
Yeah, and funny enough, he criticized Monsterverse Mothra because she wasn't faithful enough, and I'm like, okay, so what about GMK? So does GMK?
Oh, that's what you were talking about, because I guess you mean like reference to like King Ghidorah and stuff.
Yeah, because he was talking about faithfulness, and it's like, okay, so she has the webs which Mothra had in her larva form, but okay, she just keeps it throughout, like both shapes.
Light rays, light rays, which I believe Rebirth had.
And Heisei had it. Yeah.
Heisei generally had it. I know in the film, so like Heisei generally had it. So
she does the thing from GMK too, with the energy. She has the immortality.
The only really unfaithful thing is the design, and even then it generally keeps a moth-esque shape.
I mean not really, but that's not really the point. Because the thing is, GMK looks like a fucking skeleton. Even if it looks more like a moth, Mothra never looked like that, right? Mm-hmm. And also she shoots like spikes out of nowhere, literally. And she's like the creature of water or something like that. Like, come on, like that's super unfaithful, but that doesn't mean that it's bad. So that to me just says that the guy didn't even watch GMK. which clearly he didn't, because he didn't even talk about Millennium. Like, he says that they were all solid.
GMK would completely destroy so many of these people's arguments, and I think it's always funny when they never mention that movie.
Well, either they like glaze it as like being like the one exception in the Millennium era, or they never talk about it.
Yeah. Wonder why that is.
Here he just said that they're all solid, and it's like, I mean, not really. That's also wrong. Also, like, what does solid mean?
Yeah, what does solid mean? What does fun mean? Like, all of these terms don't really have any grounding behind them, so like it's pretty nebulous. And I guess we're supposed to just infer what it means based on like what we know about the guy. But this is his only Godzilla content, so I don't really know what to think.
I am now calling him vague coasting Graham.
Wait, does this technically make him Millennium or Reiwa era skipper?
I mean, that Shin misinformation was really bad, to be fair.
Yeah.
Also, I generally disagree. Sorry, but like I generally disagree with what you said in response to my me talking about Shin Godzilla's takes in like regards to the allegory and how you said it becomes more formulaic. I disagree because I think 54, for example, does carry the sort of allegorical nature all the way to its end through the footsteps. Which sorry, I just want to expand on that because
not just the footsteps, I would also throw in the oxygen destroyer.
Yeah, like, and whereas in Shin, recycling the same footsteps turns it into just a vapid homage to a better movie.
Yeah.
Bumblebee was getting some hard backshots right there.
There wasn't even anything loud. What are you in the kitchen on the other side of the room?
My sibling in Christ! It sounds like someone is trying to play drums with a frying pan.
No, it just sounds like someone just straight up clapping cheeks now.
Maybe.
Bruh.
Wait, what are you clapping cheeks with, Lau?
His other cheeks.
I just farted really fast, and it just does the thing.
Also,
no, bro just knows how to make it clap.
Also, Hoshi.
He is he? I guess we'll bring him on and we'll kind of just end things off because we're about to.
Yeah, funny enough, there's not much to say about stuff like this because
it's
nothing.
Really, all
it's
of it is
meaningless video.
Hey guys, really, all of it is doing. All of it is just an extension of what we talked about yesterday in terms of like the kaiju's reception.
I would genuinely say, however, this is one of the worst we've seen as of late.
Wait, even worse than the one with Little Platoon.
I think that the Wave one was way worse.
Maybe, yeah. I would still say Something Productive is the worst one for Zimcast.
Yes, that one is still probably the worst.
Yeah, without question.
I would still say Something Productive, Little Platoon in this video form an unholy trinity.
The holy trinity of absolute bullshit.
You're forgetting about Americans Don't Understand Godzilla. The American. Oh.
That entire video is just a one massive brainwash.
Hoshi, wait, let Pyro talk.
I got it, guys.
I was just gonna say, like, I think one of the biggest issues, like, after seeing time and time again of just like really terrible video essays or analysis or like just like reviews, there just seems to be a disconnect with the idea of like the kaiju genre in general, where like, yes, Godzilla, maybe Kong, those are the two that we can allow to actually be analyzed, but like other than that, it's just like the genre isn't taken seriously enough. It seemed to be an issue in the last part of the video that Zim was watching, like, because this was a two-parter, but it's just like, yeah, you're not looking at this or you're not analyzing this in an actual honest way, because a lot of the examples that this dude is bringing up of like issues with the whole Godzilla series. It's just like, okay, I need you to back this up. I need you to give me examples of this being said in the era, not when we're looking back at this like 50 years from, because like we're all fans and we can point out that bias, but like where's this fact coming from it when these movies are released? Like, let me see some of those reviews. Oh wait, you don't have any. And that just seems like to be a big issue that keeps repeating itself, because like we don't take the genre seriously when it comes to like media the same way we don't when it comes to animation. So the only thing that's getting peddled in this genre are like the same 2 or 3 kaiju that we already know, which is like Kong, Godzilla, maybe Gamera if you're a true fan of the genre, but like ask anyone about kaiju or like giant monsters and their thing is just going to be like, oh yeah, King Kong, Godzilla. And then like we just run into the same issue again, like, and it's really infuriating because like these reviews are just slop. The review we just watched unfortunately isn't a joke, it's just slop.
Yeah. What do you guys think we can do about this, right? Like, because it's so I'm not necessarily frustrated. This frustrates me a little bit more, or a little bit, just because the guy has the audacity to say nothing, and then he just milks off the franchise and makes like multiple videos about it. Of course, I'm not saying like, hey, how do we hack him or anything like that. No. I mean, like, what can we do as like a community to like promote? I guess promoting people that actually are putting the effort is the only thing we can do, right? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would genuinely trying to put. I would like to say, I'd like to say trying to put in the effort ourselves is one thing. Considering, and Kuru, you have the Showa era, I have Nemesis, and all of us are, well, most of us are doing a One Monstrous Moment. So, and we're obviously doing a collaborative thing for that, which we're all focusing on our own separate niches and our own separate like groups. But I think just talking about this stuff, the fact that the Zimcast is covering this kind of stuff in the first place, I think is a good thing, because it allows an opportunity to actively showcase to actively ask people, hey, are you correct about this? No. Do you think you could do better? Yes. And
yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with Minecraft. Sorry.
Yeah.
I feel like the best things we can do as a community, continue to call slop like this out, demand better out of our critics, and work on things ourselves as a community. And like
and demand respect
as a group.
Demand respect for the things we care about. One thing that added to the fact that I was getting frustrated is Master Samwise he's another channel on YouTube. He does like media analysis stuff. He did a video like criticizing the whole but it's just fiction bullshit. And this argument was essentially that in reference to the genre. Boiling it down to fun monster action with the human story that speaks for itself, with the occasional exceptions, and even then, not even pointing out why those exceptions work in the context of the rest of the genre, when the rest of the genre has more than just those exceptions. It's not just giant monsters go burr. It's stories that can have and will impact people. And I'm getting angry at this.
You know, the thing is, like, as you know, like, I think that actually, like, helpful Godzilla movies are, like, mid to bad. And even I'm annoyed at this. And the reason why is because, like, you can dislike something or you can like it. But the thing is, you need to take it seriously if you're going to give it time like this.
Give it the proper fucking respect it deserves. Yeah, it's okay to criticize. We're not saying not to criticize it. But just treat it like you would a Marvel movie. Oh, lend the same.
That hurts.
No,
that hurts my soul.
Sorry, lend the same. Let me rephrase. Lend the same olive branch that you would have given to the MCU. If I were to say this stuff about the early MCU or even Marvel films before the MCU, you would have rightfully ripped me to shreds.
Okay, and now Hoshi wanted to. Yeah.
Look, if I'm gonna be frank, compared to most of you guys, I'm practically a normie of the Godzilla fans. But even I can say that this video, or at least this duology video, is complete hot garbage because it's like everyone said, it's every single bad Godzilla critique ever out there. It takes all the stuff that people constantly said, but it never tries to, you know, explain it or try to do something different with it. And because that it's just another generic run-of-the-mill criticism video that doesn't even bother to, you know, deep dive into what this series means to the people, or at least the fans everywhere. And granted, I only watched his whole video, and I don't really have a full grasp on what this YouTuber is, who he is as a content creator. But even I, after seeing these videos, can probably say that, yeah, this guy doesn't get it. Or even if he says he's a fan, in my eyes, even I, as someone who is more of a average Joe when it comes to this fandom, can probably say, you're speaking hot garbage, man. Get out.
To just add a little bit to it, I'm just going to be blunt. I think that what fans or what the movies mean to the fans means absolutely like hot shit. Like it doesn't mean anything what you feel about the movie or what I feel. It means what matters is what the movie is trying to do. Like the movie itself, like the fans I think are irrelevant. But what I was going to also add as a separate thing is like I would be ashamed of just making a nothing burger video, dude. Like, you know, guys, like, same. Are we allowed to talk about the monstrous moment thing here, like in detail?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so I knew about Sim making this little project for all of us to do like a monstrous moment thing, and I'm not part of it just because I didn't really feel like there was anything that I could say that hadn't been said before. Because what I actually like about the movies is what most people that actually like the movies in the same way that I do have already spoken about. Because I don't think that there's that many movies that are actually great in the Godzilla franchise. So the ones that I like are the ones that everyone has talked to death about. So the last thing that I would have wanted to do is just add something that's meaningless just because so many people have already done it. And I know for a fact that a lot of people will be talking about Minus One. I know that a lot of people have already said everything that you have to say about 54, but they will still say it again because maybe they just didn't know that someone else said the same thing. GMK, you know, like all of these movies. So, you know, it's like a lack of integrity at that point. Like, was he unaware of all the people saying the same meaningless slop that he was saying?
Can I add
Because
something?
if he was, then I would say that that's okay. But if he has made like bare minimum research, it's like, dude, do better, do something new. Like it's
I think
so
we'll
annoying.
probably have this be like our last kind of closing moments on the topic and close it out here.
Demand better out of our critics.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Just to answer your question, and I'll try and make this as short as I can. I know I'm long-winded on these things usually. I think it's just like a multi-pronged effort to try and like get the kaiju front taken seriously in general. We can talk about how many of these video essays come out and how they're just all repetitive and they're all saying the singular points and whatnot. And unfortunately, I think that's just going to happen as things go on. We talk about like holding them up to the Marvel standard, and unfortunately, the Marvel standard is kind of the same thing, at least in online spaces. they are held up to all of the comics, all of the, past media that's like held in high regard by the actual fans themselves. But then when you get out on the normie sphere, when you go out and actually talk about these things, they're like more surface level than that. And I think that's a reason that these movies, especially Godzilla specifically, keeps having this issue. Unfortunately, the more modern facing front of the franchise is the Monsterverse. We're getting more stuff from Toho that's a little bit more serious and a little bit more grounded and taken more serious. And we see when it is taken more serious, like Minus One, and we just need to be promoting more of that. When it comes to like as the genre itself, like there's a part we need to take seriously just like as fans of the genre, where we recognize that it's something like Star Wars or like space travel and time travel, where the moment you introduce these concepts, a lot of people are going to write them off. A lot of people. It's going to take a lot of the strongest people who can like deal with suspension of disbelief to put aside like, giant monsters are a part of this. Space travel. I but like a big part of it is just like you have to do it well, and that's a standard we all have to kind of hold ourselves to, where it's just like we can't be afraid to criticize the kaiju medium, people who create kaiju stories, like a lot of the OG stuff that's not Godzilla or Kong. Otherwise, we run the risk of just like becoming another echo chamber of like a subside of a subside. Because like we just have to keep ourselves to a good standard where people can put aside the self belief of like, cool, giant monsters are a thing. Let's see how you make it interesting for like people putting themselves in this like exposition story.
Yeah, no, I really don't have anything to say about that. I'm pretty much in agreement when it comes to that. I'm not sure if anyone else has any thoughts as well in regards to that.
Oh, yeah, it kind of took everything you could say out of my mouth.
Works for me. But
yeah,
I guess without further ado, we can get to some shillings. I will bring you up to the front of the screen. You'll get to talk. I'll just mute everyone in the meantime so that it will be as easy as possible for people to talk. That's for you, Hoshi.
Hoshi, you're muted.
Oh, yeah.
No, Hoshi, you're good to speak. You're the first one showing today.
Oh, so what, you want me to talk about this topic or what?
No, just talk about like anything you want to tell to the audience since we're wrapping up.
Well, to people out there who want to like do kaiju stuff or at least deal with the tokusatsu elements, be respectful to the source material you're trying to adapt, or at least if you're going to do something, at least to make it so that people can genuinely find investment in it, and while at the same time genuinely try to make the characters feel relatable, interesting, easy to follow, while at the same time entertaining, along with the fact that you need to make creatures also easy to follow. Make the stories of these kaijus that you're trying to adapt, or at least make your own standalone stories, feel relatively simple, or at least very, how should I say it, easy to follow, at the same time deeply thematic with what theme you're trying to establish, while at the same time don't try to make it convoluted and don't make it a shriveled mess of a story. And finally, just be sincere with the story you're trying to tell, and be sincere with the monster you're trying to create, or at least respect the original kaiju that has its own history behind it. And yeah, that's all I had to say.
All right, Mike. Minecraft.
Sorry, I'm muted. You can find me here on YouTube at Minecraft World 1954. That's my @ or just Minecraft World. I have essays in the work, and sorry, this video has just been actively pissing me off. Yeah, I'm also on Instagram and Kara and Blue Sky. I have artworks. I've been doing Usy Kaiju April. Also, while watching the stream, I have been drawing Xeno, the Xeno who was in the chat, his original kaiju Ashura. So that's been fun. And yeah, uh, uh, please, for the love of God, treat the genre with respect. Also, go read Gayatima. Bye.
Pyro.
I'm the Pyro Tyrant. You can find me on Instagram at Pontifex Monstrum. Other than that, I usually just float around and harass him whenever he's streaming. When it comes to like the kaiju genre, a lot of the issues that come from it are the same that come from like genres like animation, anime, things like that, where they're just not taken seriously in like the mainstream eye. They're seen as kind of like a niche interest, and it's our job to get them taken seriously, whether that is creating stories that like actually mean something, or whether it's like analyzing things that have already been done and like actually trying to look at them in a critical light. I think it's our job to actually like get the foot in the door where we're something that's more known and more respected, just like everything else.
There we go. Vic.
Yeah, well, you can always find me here on YouTube as the Kaijunaut, where you can find things like figure reviews, vlogs, different discussions on kaiju media, as well as all of my art compilations. Um, Other than my various commission that you can find on my pages like Kofi, as well as on my socials of Vic Monstrous or Crispy Vic on Instagram. And then again, I do have the fundraiser for my Pocho figure. If you want to check that out, share it, would be much appreciated. And then as for some recommendations on some movies, I did recently watch Thrash on Netflix, the new shark movie. Pretty good. I would recommend it if you want like a cool little hurricane atmospheric movie. It was pretty neat. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And then for the overall topic, I think people just need to be sincere in what they want to discuss. Make sure you get all the facts straight. You know, maybe go to some either well versed enthusiasts or experts to get your sources. And other than that, have a good one.
There we go. Kuru.
Yeah, I'm just like, if you're gonna talk about this genre, give it its proper dues. And yeah, for stuff that I have to shill, you can find me here on YouTube at Kaiju Guru, also on Instagram and Twitter under the same name. No, I will not call it X. I actually have a number of projects in the works. A video essay talking about Oguri Cat, why she's a great character. I will definitely be making a probably shorter video talking about the teaser for -0 when it comes out tomorrow, which you will probably expect on Wednesday. Holy hell, I cannot believe it's finally happening. I also have a video talking about Gogmazios and why I think it's one of the best kaiju in video games. And the Showa era analysis video series, which will be probably like 3 or 4 videos talking about the films from the Showa era. And the last thing, which is actually a collaborative thing with Zim, where we're going to be talking about like dinosaurs in kaiju films and its relationship to suspension of disbelief and people's like really weird standards with that. So keep your eyes peeled for those in the coming weeks or months. And that's all from me. Recommendations: go watch Cinderella Grey and go read guides.
There we go. And Lau.
So I don't have anything from my own side because I'm moving I have arrived safely, but still have no PC. I need to rearrange it. So I have something more important, which is if you're tired of this like fucking tourists coming to the fandom or and just taking from it to make nothing burgers, actually go and support the real creators that actually put effort and sincerity into their videos. So for that, I wanted to talk about real life Ryan, who has made a retrospective on all of Gamera, like the whole fucking thing, every single movie, every single episode of the show, like everything. It's like I think like 3 hours. So yeah. Not only that, he also has a couple of Godzilla videos, and he's going to make a retrospective on Showa first, then Heisei, and all of that. The Showa might as well be like probably like more than 10 hours because of how he does things. So like he really puts the effort. And even though I disagree with him in a couple of things about his takes, like I still feel like he's one of the most sincere fans out there doing this kind of thing. So I know he's not really well known, and instead of giving thousands of views to people like this dude or Wave or whatever his name was from yesterday, you should like really support people from his type of you should support people like him. And because I know that not everyone knows him necessarily, if you're not into the pre-production and all of that of the movies, how it was made, go watch Big Action Bill. So yeah, Big Action Bill is someone that makes a bunch of videos on every single movie individually. He's constantly updating his videos actually to make them better. Even if the video was released like 2 years ago, you might see a re-upload because he's trying to make them as accurate as possible to how things happened historically. Again, behind the cameras and all of that. So yeah, those are two creators. One is smaller, the other one is better known, but still, like I just wanted to put it out there. And yeah, that's all I had to say.
So that just leaves me. I would say you guys can find me pretty much almost anywhere. Just a Zimzilla OG in front of it for Twitter. Those are my Discord numbers. I multi-stream obviously to Twitch and Facebook, but I also have uploads on OBS and BitChute in case anything happens to these other channels here. I post on Instagram and DeviantArt for my art, as well as some of it on Twitter too, where you can also find me. But for Patreon, which is a little link up there, that's where anything relating to my novel Kaiju Quarantine is going to be going. So I'll be having a few things up in the next couple of days. I appreciate everyone who has shown up and continues to support in any way they can. You guys are awesome. Enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, that's about it. Just don't listen to tourists. See you guys.